Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became the Shinobi Emperor and ruled beside a supreme harem of Hinata, Temari, Mei, Kurenai, Anko, Tsunade, and Makoto. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It was the time of the winter solstice and all the gods were gathered and it was the same argument they all had been arguing for who knows how long. Suddenly a group of people materialized in front of the gods. They were Percy, Annabeth, Talia, Nico, and Grover. Zeus as usual demanded in a booming voice, "What are you demigods doing here and who are you?" The demigods and satyr were confused. "Didn't you summon us, Lord Zeus?" asked Annabeth. Just as Zeus was about to reply, three old women appeared in front of everyone and they all recognized who the three were. They were the Fates and whenever they appeared either a death or something important would happen. Fate number 1 spoke first. "We called them there from several years in the future to read these book series, however you won't be reading about strictly your adventures but with another in your group." Fate number 2 spoke next. "You will be reading an interdimensional crossover version of the future. Well, the book will be reading itself and for certain events there will be a projection of what is happening." Finally Fate number 3 finished up the three-part talk. "What none of you know is that there are millions of different dimensions and more are created every day and quite often many dimensions intersect and create a whole new dimension." Naturally everyone, even Athena and Annabeth, were shocked at hearing what the Fates just said. To hear that they have different versions of themselves and possibly several thousand versions at that would shock anybody. Also to hear that there are dimensions that they don't even know existed was a little disheartening, especially for the gods. Percy was able to summon up his courage to ask why they were being told to read these books if it wasn't about their dimension. It was Fate number 3 who answered, "This is because of something you once asked Kyron Perseus Jackson. You had asked what good one hero can do. Now you will be getting a real answer to that question." Fate number 1 stepped forward to continue. "What you are about to read is a crossover with the Shinobi world. Now there is something that we need to tell you about how they fight. In their world they fight with abilities called jutsu which have several categories such as ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. We will no be telling you what they involve, you will find out when you read, however you will be given some history knowledge." With that, as the Fates left the basics from the bijus to ranks began to run through the minds of all those present. It took 20 minutes but they were able to sort everything and they were astounded. Now it was time to read. "So let's do this," Percy said. So while the demigods sat down on an elongated couch that facing the gods, it was going to the right Percy, Annabeth, Talia, Nico, finally Grover. Now the book shimmered and sainted out loud the title Naruto Prince of the Underworld. The title of the book definitely raised eyebrows but found themselves unable to say anything about it, but definitely thought that it was about another son of Hades. Chapter 1: A Whole New World. Two teenage boys were facing off in a place called the Valley of the End. This place was the final battle site of the first Hokage, the founder of Konoha, and Madara Uchiha, leader of the Uchiha clan. The two boys were Naruto Uzumaki, who was in his one-tailed form, and Sasuke Uchiha, who was in his Curse Seal Level 2 form. Both boys were using malevolent powers, but for a purpose. "Wait, what kind of power?" shouted everyone. Sasuke Uchiha was using his power to gain a greater power and finally avenge his family by killing his older brother, Itachi Uchiha. That one man, in one night, literally obliterated the clan. Everyone's eyes widened at the fact that this boy's older brother had murdered his clan. He was going to kill Naruto to gain the ultimate power of his clan's power, the Mangekyo Sharingan. To gain the twisted power of the Sharingan, one has to lose something very precious to them. Okay, now everyone thought that both brothers were completely sick. Naruto, however, was using the dark power sealed within him to bring back his best friend to the village, back to Sakura Haruno. She was the girl he loved, but she loved Sasuke for some reason. He would bring back the last Uchiha for her. He would even use Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox, the bane of his existence, to bring him back. What the hell? For you see, Naruto was supposed to be seen as a hero for keeping the evil fox at bay, but he is seen as the Kyuubi itself, and so, he is hated by all but the younger generation. Naruto saw Sasuke as his brother, because while he was at the bottom of the ninja class and an orphan, Sasuke was at the top, and the Uchiha was the first person of the younger generation to accept him. So, he would bring him back no matter what. I am not going back, Naruto. That place is only holding me back. I need to get enough power to beat him, Sasuke said as he flapped his giant hand-like wings, while activating his best jutsu, the Chidori, a weaker version of the lightning blade. It was also black because of the evil chakra he was using. He really sounds disgusting, cried Aphrodite. For once everyone agreed, two hand-like wings out of the back is disgusting. It wasn't the having wings that was disgusting, but these wings were hand-like. I will take you back no matter what, even if I got to break every bone in your body. Naruto yelled as the tail of the fox cloak swished behind him. He brought his hand to the side and a ball of energy swirled onto it. The Rasengan, normally blue thanks to human chakra, was now purple because of the mixing of human and demonic energies. The two were at the bottom of a waterfall that had the statues of the two who once battled here. Sasuke was at Madara's feet while Naruto was the first Hokage's feet. With an unspoken word, the two flung into the air at each other, their attacks colliding. The demigods were a little anxious for Naruto. They could tell that Naruto had to hold back if he was to bring this Sasuke back to their home in their world. That would put him at a disadvantage against someone trying to kill. Chidori. Rasengan. The energies combined around the two 13-year-old boys, creating a large sphere of purple energy around them. Then there was a flash of light, as if there was an explosion of pure power, and now Naruto was knocked out on the ground while Sasuke was standing above the boy. I am still better than you, Sasuke said as he walked away in the nearby forest. He would not kill Naruto, because then he would be just like Itachi. That was a matter of opinion to the demigods. However, something didn't feel right to Athena and Annabeth. They were wondering why did Itachi kill his clan. For some reason they both could tell there was something bigger in play. A few minutes, the rain began to pour down. The seal that held the evil Kyuubi glowed brightly through Naruto's clothes on his stomach. Then in another flash of light, the one who sealed the terrible beast inside Naruto appeared next to the blonde-haired ninja, the fourth Hokage himself. The two looked almost alike, except for the whisker marks on Naruto's cheeks. The fourth looked at Naruto sadly and said, "I'm sorry my son, I should have never sealed Kyuubi into you. I should have just let the village be destroyed by the beast." The fourth Hokage then got down to his knees and put a hand on Naruto's seal, and slowly a ball of crimson-red energy with the seal surrounding it came out. "It is time I take you to your true home," he said after he pocketed the ball of energy and held up Naruto's unconscious body, bridal style. That is when Kakashi, Naruto's sensei and the fourth's old student, came on the scene. The Jonin's lone eye widened to that of a dish plate. Sensei. Minato sensei. Oh hello Kakashi, Minato said as he leveled a glare at the one-eyed man. Sorry to say, but I am not truly here. When I sealed the Kyuubi into Naruto, I sealed part of my soul as well. Oh, and just so you know, I saw everything. This one statement made the Jonin pale and start sweating. For some reason I don't like where this is going, said Hades in his mind as he had figured out that this Naruto was his son, and because of how he was reacting it could mean that his son had not had a very pleasant childhood. I saw how the villagers ignored Naruto when he was just a child, they overpriced everything he bought, the academy held him back not for being stupid. What? Yelled everyone. Athena, who was very repulsed at a school doing their very best to hold back children from gaining all the knowledge they could, while the demigods were furious that one of their own was the target of an entire village, and for Hades you could literally see his eyes alight. They caused that, but because of the fact that they hated Naruto. No one gave him a chance, and when he got onto your team, you turned your back on him and the girl to train only the Uchiha. That made the demigods even more angry than before. To only train one student and just forget about the rest of a teacher's students was repulsive, even if there were demigods that were more powerful than others, each got equal training time. You are just like the villager. At least the third Hokage helped him when he could without that damn council interfering. That saying, those who don't follow the rules are trash, but those who don't help their comrades are worse than trash, does not apply to you. You are such a hypocrite, and a failure in my eyes. Minato growled out as he walked to a black portal. I hope you are proud of yourself. Sensei, wait, came the shaky voice of Kakashi. Are you going to say sorry? Don't bother, it won't change a thing. Minato said as he adjusted his hold on Naruto and brought a hand into the air. Come. There was a pulse in the air and 8 orbs came and spun around his hand. This world has seen enough of the tailed beasts, it is time for the power of the Kraken to leave this world. In this way, the other demon containers would not die, Naruto would hate me if I killed that Gaara kid. With that, the blonde duo disappeared into the darkness, never to be seen again in this world. The demigods and Hades sighed because they were happy that Naruto was away from that world. Kakashi fell to his knees, so lost that he never noticed the rain stop or how long he had been there. He slowly got back up and somberly walked back to the village. Lady Tsunade is not going to be happy. Sasuke, who was almost to Orochimaru, the man who promised him power, felt a burning sensation in his eyes and quickly went to a nearby puddle. The sight before him was the Mangekyo Sharingan. And no, that means that, Sasuke said to himself, not being able to finish his sentence. He silently cried to himself as he walked to Orochimaru's hideout. Sakura, Lee, and a few others were freaking out. Gaara had just screamed out when a tan ball of energy flew out of him. But now it seemed that he was fine. Temari was fussing over her little brother, and when he said that he no longer heard the voice, she gave him a tearful hug. Though, one could not help but wonder what the hell just happened. The demigods could sympathize that they all had plenty of, what the hell, experiences. Then a cry from the guards caught everyone's attention because they saw a figure in the distance. Taking a closer look, Tsunade saw that it was Kakashi. When the scarecrow-haired man finally made it to the gates, he fell to his knees with a broken and defeated look on his face. This did not bode well. Kakashi-sensei, what happened? Sakura hesitantly asked. They are both gone. Sasuke left the battle site, leaving Naruto to die. Only, what I got there, Naruto was unconscious but not alone. Kakashi droned out, giving the now present Jiraiya a sad look. My sensei was there as well. He said that he saw everything and that he should have just let the village be destroyed by the Kyuubi. Then he called out to the tailed beasts and they obviously came and he took them and Naruto, to the underworld I would guess. Kakashi said while the younger generation gasped while Tsunade and Jiraiya looked away in shame. Sakura noticed this and asked. Sensei? Who was your sensei? She asked with tears forming in her eyes over her lost teammates. Jiraiya was the one to answer her question. The fourth Hokage and Naruto's father. There was absolute silence at this statement. The ninja and the villagers who had arrived at the gates to welcome back the Uchiha, all stared in shock at the toad sage before everyone let out a panicked, "What?" that consumed the village. A day after Naruto was taken from his world, the blonde was now in a bed. From the sounds outside the window, it seemed that it was very noisy out there. Slowly waking up, Naruto bolted up and looked around. This place was not his apartment in Konoha, nor was it a hospital room. Looking around him, he noticed a scroll addressed to him. "Dear Naruto, I am sorry for what I did to you all those years ago. Yes, I am the fourth Hokage, but I am also your father. My name is Minato Namikaze. I understand if you hate me, but know that I will always love you. Now, I have taken you away from Konoha, even from the elemental countries. You are in a place called the United States, more specifically New York City, New York. Though I am dead as Minato Namikaze, I am still alive, but thanks to your uncle I cannot be truly active in your life. Don't worry though, we will meet in time. When the time comes, I will be happy to see you. Now, since you are still young, you have to go to school in this world and I have enrolled you in Yancy Academy. In the seal at the bottom of the scroll, you will find all that you need in this world and that includes money. Also, there are some special jutsu that only you can learn since you are my son. Oh, just for a reference for the future, get a book on Greek mythology, you will need that info, trust me. Be careful my son. Minato." Naruto sighed as he looked out the window after reading the scroll. He had a lot to do in this new and strange world. Smirking, he created a shadow clone and got to work sorting out the stuff in the scroll. He did notice that his shadow clone came out differently, it literally formed from out of the shadows. Zeus thought about the book and frowned a bit but quickly got over it and decided to ask the more important question is who were these demigods? Out of the whole group of demigods he only knew Talia his daughter. He decided it would be best to ignore her presence until he got enough courage to stand up to his would-be pissed-off wife if she knew, Hera. He used his master bolt to light up Olympus and shouted out, "Who are you demigods?" A stormy gray-eyed girl with honey blonde hair came forward that carried wisdom beyond her years. I knew she was a daughter of Athena because of her stormy gray eyes. She bowed then answered Annabeth Chase, daughter of Athena. Next up was a olive-skinned boy with black eyes and black hair but carried an aura of death. It got me into a frown because this boy was so familiar but I could not put my finger on it. He bowed then said Nico D'Angelo, son of Hades and Ghost King. I was furious was an understatement. How dare Hades break the oath we made after World War II? Hades. I roared while in my anger Olympus was lighten up momentary. But after about 7 minutes I calmed down. I gave the approval for the next demigod introducing. Then a boy with green eyes and black hair came forward a little nervous but bowed. I answered in an angry voice what his name was and who his godly parent is. He said Perseus Jackson, but call me Percy, son of Poseidon. A son of Hades and Poseidon. I shouted angrily. I lifted up my master bolt but was held back by shadows and water. I looked at Poseidon which got me a glare from the said fathers. Then my daughter came to me, it filled me with dread thinking about what my dear wife's reaction will be. She bowed and said Talia, daughter of Zeus and lieutenant of Lady Artemis. Now Hades and Poseidon was angry at me saying I was a hypocrite. They were cursing me about having sired a demigod. I slammed my master bolt onto the floor that made a shockwave and shouted silence. The room became eerily silent, which was good. But the bad part is that I could feel some glares on me. Then I looked at my lovely wife. Worst mistake of my immortal life because she had a look downright frightening. She growled out, "We will have a few words late, dearie." I gulped and silent cursed anything in particular for putting me in this position. I quickly saw the book and thought it just might save me. So I transported the book into my hands and opened to chapter 2 and began. No Pav. Chapter 2. It has been a few months since Naruto arrived in this new land. Learning a new language had been surprisingly easy. Annabeth and Athena had a thoughtful look while the other gods, goddesses, and demigods had surprised looks on their faces. The gods thought it was very uncommon that a demigod could learn a new language besides ancient Greek easily. Unless they were born into it. It was impossible to have the much of learning capability unless he had a lot of help. But the boy was not even there for a year yet. Though he did find out that he was dyslexic because of the fact that he would sometimes get the words backwards. Of course, all the occupants in the room thought that was not all bad, for you see, he had met a boy with the same problem. His name was Percy Jackson. Looks went to the boy sitting on the throne room filled with surprise because he was in the series so quickly. The two got along very well. They were both impulsive and that hated being in school. Athena and Annabeth looked scandalized while all the Poseidon smiled and put his thumb up in job well done. Everyone else was either laughing or had an emotionless mask on. Naruto's reason was because of his experience in the academy back home, while Percy's reason was that weird shit happened to him and that made not a lot of people like him. Now, Naruto being himself did not really give a rat's ass about that. All the demigods while Hestia was thinking the same thing smiled and thought, what a good friend. That and the fact that he told Percy about his ninja abilities only strengthened their friendship. Percy wished that he could make shadow clones to do his own homework. Percy looked envious and wanted that ability because all his clones would do all the chorus and homework for him. So did Annabeth with totally different reasons, of course. Then through that friendship came another. Through Percy, he had met Grover Underwood. "G-man," shouted Percy. The boy was a cripple because he was always seen with crutches. He was also a bit of a hippie in his opinion because of the fact that he barely ever ate meat and by the way he dressed. Though all in all, Grover was a very nice guy. He usually looked out for Percy and himself the best he could, of course being crippled made him a bit weak. Now, however, our trio was on a bus to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They were taking a trip to learn about Greek mythology, not that Naruto needed it since he knew a lot already. Athena and Annabeth wanted to know more about the elemental nations. Sitting in his seat, Naruto saw what Percy was wearing for today. With his dark hair, he wore an orangish shirt, blue jeans, and some black shoes. Grover, who was sitting right next to Percy, had his usual crutches, a yellow shirt and some oversized pants on that hid his shoes. Naruto was the oddball of the group. Compared to his old clothes, he wore a pair of black DC shoes, some ripped jeans, and a black shirt on that had a picture of a skull with blue flames licking the teeth while a bluish-silver Chinese dragon broke through the top of the skull. Aphrodite thought his choice of clothing was good and drifted in thought. While the males in the room thought the design on the shirt was good. He was getting annoying like Percy at the moment because Nancy Bobofit was throwing wads of her peanut butter and jelly at Grover, who was acting like nothing was happening to him for their sake. Sure, if Percy did anything to stop her he would be expelled for something stupid. The kid was already on probation because of the odd shit that happened to him but he could not help it. Naruto, however, was not and he could do anything within reason. He smirked in anticipation. I am going to kill her. Naruto heard Percy mumble. It is okay. I like peanut butter. Grover commented as he had to dodge piece of Nancy's lunch. Hey G-man, do you really like peanut butter? Asked Percy. It's okay Percy, but not my favorite things to eat. That's it. Percy growled out as he started to get up but Grover kept him down. That is when Percy saw the look in Naruto's eyes and smirked. You're already on probation. Grover reminded Percy. You know who'll get blamed if anything happens. Percy smirked and said, "Only if I am the one doing it." That statement made Grover suddenly look at Naruto, and he was about to warn his other friend in the seat next to them, but he never got the chance to because at that moment, Nancy threw another piece of her lunch at Grover. Naruto, who had been fiddling with a paper football, immediately threw the paper projectile at the wad, and it caught the piece of sandwich and kept on traveling to the window where it struck through a bit. "Ms. Boba Fett. Star Wars," Percy and Nico shouted while Talia and Annabeth's sweat dropped. Naruto started with an annoyed smirk as he made fun of the girl's last name. "Please stop that. Why the hell you care, Uzumaki? You too cool for those two losers, so why bother helping them?" The redhead questioned. "Skell, she has a crush on Naruto that is so cute, but Naruto doesn't." "Because they are better people than you are," Naruto said with a glare that sent chills down the girl's spine. "Now please stop, or next time, the paper football will be in you and not the window." Aphrodite thought, "I wonder what he looks when he is older, hopeful he is handsome. Maybe this book will entertain me if it has romances. Like Naruto and a hunter or even a harem." While the other gods and goddesses thought, "Yup, sounds like something Hades would do." Nancy took another look at window to see part of the paper was outside impaled. She quickly nodded her head. "Good girl," Naruto said, making a lot of the students around them laugh, included Percy and Grover. Mr. Brunner led the museum tour. He rode up front in his wheelchair, leading the group through the big galley, past marble statues, and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. Naruto could not help but chuckle at the choice of colors. Naruto looked at Percy and saw the boy was blown away by the fact that this old stuff was in good condition. "Well, seaweed brain, it is in a museum," whispered Annabeth. Percy had the decency to blush and stutter. Aphrodite smiled at them and thought, "Perkabeth, hopeful I didn't change that. Dude, you mouth is hanging open." Percy's face went red as he closed his mouth. Naruto just laughed at his friend's expression. "Sorry, it is just that this stuff is really old. Hey, well, when you have fanatics looking for this stuff, they find it and try and bring it back to the condition it was once in," Naruto said. Annabeth and Athena thought maybe a child of Athena married to the blonde's family. Percy looked at Naruto oddly before shaking his head. "I keep forgetting that you are one of those fanatics." This made Annabeth and Athena guess more likely, but they could be wrong. "Only when he gets claimed then they will know for sure. I mean, you read about all that Greek mythology all the time." The other occupants in the room looked at Athena or Annabeth because Naruto acted somewhat like a child of Athena. "There is some pretty interesting stuff." Naruto shrugged as they walked with the group to where Mr. Brunner had stopped. "Besides, Mr. Brunner is under the assumption that we should both know about it all." Percy just rolled his eyes. "Easy for you to say, you're interested in it. I mean that class in math class is what you excel in." Athena and Annabeth smiled while Percy and Grover both thought, "Isn't that Mrs. Dodd's class? The others are mediocre, like me." Athena and Annabeth's smile disappeared but said nothing. "Hey, touche," Naruto replied, knowing he had been had there. Percy usually tried his best, but thanks to his dyslexia and ADHD, he had a hard concentrating on much of anything at school. So the guy just didn't have much interest in them. Turning their attention to Mr. Brunner, they went quiet, listened to the guy tell them about the ancient gods and other stuff like that. He had gathered them around a 13-foot-tall column with a big sphinx on the top, and the man started telling us how it was a grave marker, a steal, for a girl about our age. He told us about the carvings on the sides. Naruto noticed that Percy was actually paying attention, but the idiots around them would not shut up, and when Percy told them to be quiet, for some odd reason Ms. Dodds, the annoying substitute math teacher, would give the both of them the evil eye. Percy and Grover winced at the reminder of Mrs. Dodds while thinking, how did Naruto excel in that class? It was like she expected them to do something bad. That annoyed Naruto even further, and he was getting a bad vibe from her. The gods and goddesses all thought, how can he sense a monster? Her chakra was odd too, he would have to keep an eye out for her. Athena nodded her head approvingly at how Naruto was taking precautions. Grover noticed this as well, and we both nodded to each other. This was someone they would keep an eye out for, because when Percy told them that he thought she was not human, Grover gave him a very serious look like he already knew and agreed with him. Talia shouted at Grover saying, "You are going to blow your cover, geez, they're probably going to get Naruto and Kelp Head killed." Naruto just didn't like her because she was an old bitch. Wow, I wonder if he will say it to her face. Hopeful soon, thought Percy. Anyway, Mr. Brunner just kept on talking about Greek funeral art. When Nancy blabbed about a man on the steel, Naruto saw Percy snapped and practically yelled at her to shut up. "Mr. Jackson. Busted," sang Annabeth and Talia. Came the voice of Mr. Brunner. "Did you have a comment?" "No, sir," Percy replied, embarrassed by his outburst, which made Naruto shake his head. Sure, he was going to say the same to the redhead, but Percy beat him to it. The wheelchair man then pointed to one of the pictures on the steel, asking Percy what the picture meant. Knowing Percy, he will answer in a very short answer if any, came Annabeth's voice. Percy looked at Annabeth in surprise, but Annabeth's response was to just stuck out her tongue at him. Everyone laughed at Percy's red face. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, looking not that satisfied. "And can you tell me why?" Seeing Percy have a hard time answer that question, Naruto decided to intervene. "Told you, seaweed brain," joked Annabeth. "The psycho ate his kid because there was some prophecy telling him that his kids were going to take over one day like he did. That is the circle of live for you brats," said Ares. Naruto explained, getting a sigh of relief from Percy. He Titan Lord went and got his panties in a bunch and ate his kids because of that, but all he really did was set the prophecy in motion and screwed himself over because his wife hid her last born, Zeus. "See, Mother Rhea liked me best," shouted out Zeus. Everyone just sighed and tried to ignore Zeus' rambling. Hades and Poseidon whispered to each other, saying something close to "Mama boy," and gave the guy a rock to eat. Talk about a real rock head. Zeus growled and shouted out, "Stupid ingrat," then pouted like a 4-year-old. While everyone else laughed loudly at Zeus' expense. Naruto joked, which made a lot of people laugh, including Mr. Brunner. Anyway, when Zeus was all grown up, he tricked his dad into barfing up his brothers and sisters, and well, the war between Titans and God came to be, and the gods won. EU. One of the girls commented on the barfing part. "You didn't even know what father's stomach looked or smelled like, stupid mortal," shouted out all the elder gods and goddesses. Of course, in my opinion, I find it odd that even if the gods were immortal, that they survived in Rockhead's stomach all those years. "Hey, look at me, little brother, I am still alive and covered in stomach acid, let's hug," Naruto joked, making people snicker. Zeus snickered while his brothers and sisters silently glared at him. Behind the two, everyone heard Nancy Bobofit mumble, "Like we're going to use this in real life. Like it's going to say on our job applications, please explain why Kronos ate his kids." Athena said it might not be on a job application but a test or quiz certainly. "And why, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Uzumaki?" Mr. Brunner said, to paraphrase Miss Bobofit's excellent question, "Does this matter in real life?" "Busted," Grover muttered. "Shut up." Nancy barked at Grover, her face going redder than her hair. "I don't know." Percy shrugged, a little relieved that Nancy was picked as well. "Ya got me," Naruto said. "Maybe if we go to Greece we need to know this stuff." I see. Mr. Brunner said, a bit disappointed. Well, half credit to you both. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine. The elder gods and goddesses that were trapped in his stomach winced at the memory, which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who of course, being immortal gods, had been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. Worst time of my life, shouted Demeter and Hades. They looked at each other, then glared at one another. Then they looked away and huffing while muttering. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe. That must be painful, whispered Percy. Annabeth sighed and said, really, seaweed brain, getting hit with a scythe hurts. I didn't know that. Well, sorry, wise girl, shouted Percy. Annabeth had a light red dusting on her cheeks. When suddenly all the occupants heard a high-pitched squealing sound coming from the love goddess. After Apollo healed everyone of their deaf ears, they began and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you lead us back outside? The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs, the guys roughhousing like normal and acting like morons. When aren't males morons? Hissed out Artemis. Everyone looked at her and sighed, same old Artemis. Grover, Percy, and Naruto were about to follow when Mr. Brunner said, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Uzumaki. They told Grover to keep one going while they handled whatever Wheels was going to say to them. Sir. Mr. Brunner had this look, like he knew a lot more than he let on and that had seen too much. You two must learn the answer to my question. About the Titans? Percy asked. About real life. And how your studies apply to it. Oh. The boys mumbled, though Naruto had the sinking feeling that the man was talking about both things. Athena beamed in hope she was related to the blonde, while Annabeth was hoping for the same thing. What you boys learn from me, he started, is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will only accept the best from both of you, Percy Jackson, Naruto Uzumaki. This made both of the boys a bit angry at the man. Sure, he was cool in class when he set up those tournament days, but the man was pushing the two of them a bit hard. Percy mumbled something about trying harder while Naruto just nodded his head as they left to go eat. Naruto noticed that Mr. Brunner gave a long sad look at the steel. It was odd to say the least. Hey, maybe the guy knew the girl, not likely. The class gathered on the front steps of the museum, where they could watch the foot traffic along Fifth Avenue. The boys noticed that storm clouds were brewing. So Zeus is having a tantrum again, said Poseidon. Then Zeus glared at his older brother but said nothing. While his sisters giggled while other brother Hades laughed at him. Hey Naruto, what do you think is going on, with the weather and all? Naruto gave the boy a, are you serious look. You're asking me. I am not the freaking weather man. Burn kelp head, laughed Talia. Percy's face was red with embarrassment and he shouted out, shut up pinecone face. Talia looked at him, then narrowed her eyes and said, do you want to go kelp head? Yeah, I do, pinecone face. That does it, Jackson, you are dead. Bring it on, Grace. Fine, it's your funeral then, airhead. No, it's the other way around, Waterboy. Enough, boomed Zeus and Poseidon. We looked at one another and sighed, then sat back down and began the story again. But odd crap like this has been going on for a bit. You see it all over the news nowadays. Strange this is, no one else seems to notice the clouds other than us. With that, the two boys joined Grover as the fountain and sat down to eat. It was away from the others so they would not be bothered, and the fact that Percy didn't like being part of the school in the first made it seem that we're not part of the school for freaks. Of course, Naruto didn't care, but he was at first cheesed that he had to a school like this. Detention. Are you always in trouble, seaweed brain? Ah, no, I don't think so, replied Percy. Yes, you are kelp head, remarked Talia. Traitor, muttered Percy. Anyways, let's move on or we will never end these books, cried out Grover. Nah, Percy answered, not from Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I am not a genius. Just noticed that, did you, kelp head? Snorted Talia. Hey. Everyone laughed at Percy's face. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, hey, it is like he knows something about us. Hey, maybe we are related to some old Greek god. Very foreshadowing, replied Athena and Annabeth. Artemis nodded her head. The boys looked at each other and then burst out laughing, though for Grover it was a nervous laugh. After bit, they were quiet. Then Grover asked for Percy's apple. Demeter shouted out, fruit is good but cereal is far better for young ones. Will you shut up, women, about cereal for one day? Screamed out Hades. Maybe if you give me back my precious daughter, replied Demeter. You will in this summer, yawned out Hades. And the boy gave it to him. Even in an alternative dimension you love apples, G-man, laughed Percy. Well, yeah, I am a vegetarian, snorted Grover. Percy seemed a little lost in thought. Thinking about your mom? Naruto asked. Yeah, we are kind of close to her place. I hope she is doing alright, I mean she has been living with Gabe after all. Percy's face darkened momentarily but smiled at his gruesome fate. But no one noticed Percy's face. Percy said, a little angry about her still with Gabe. Dude, I am sure she is alright. She put up with that slob this far, I am sure can do it a little bit more. Thanks, Naruto, thought Percy. Still don't see what she sees in that guy though. It was to protect me from monsters, thought Percy again. Naruto commented. Percy nodded and was about to unwrap his sandwich when Nancy Bobofit and her annoying friends came over and got brave by dumping her lunch on Grover, making Naruto and Percy glare at her. Oops. Bitch, thought both Talia and Annabeth. While the goddesses thought, what a rude mortal. She drawled out while smirking at Percy, as if daring him to do something about that, and Naruto did not have a paper football help some. Naruto could tell that Percy was pissed and was trying to keep his temper down and was failing miserably. Then something weird happened. The water from the fountain rose up and pushed her onto her butt. He saw it perfectly because it had pulled his shadow up to hit her. Naruto is very powerful, all the gods and goddesses, thought. While Zeus thought, maybe too powerful. That is not what she saw though. Percy and Naruto pushed me. Then that old bitch, Miss Dodds, came right up to them with a hard glare. Around them they heard whispers of what happened. Apparently, Naruto was not the only one to see the water and the shadows move. After the old crone had made her Nancy was alright, she turned the two boys and started off with that, now honey, crap, but Percy beat her to it. I know. Percy grumbled, a month of erasing workbooks. No, never say your punishment because that will just make it worse. Apollo, Hermes, Nico, and Percy shouted out. Annabeth turned to glare at Percy and put on a sweet smile and said, now how would you know that, seaweed brain? Ah, from the stalls, quickly spilled the beans. She nodded her head and looked back at the book again with interest. Nico and Talia whispered, whipped. Naruto just sighed. This old hag was probably going to give him something worse. Though, it would seem that was not the right thing for Percy to say. Both of you, come with me. Hades thought. Electo is acting strange because she should know that he is my son. Wait. Grover spoke. It was me. I pushed her. We both started at Grover for that. Percy was stunned that Grover was trying to cover for them. Naruto was put off that Grover wanted the punishment for them. Hestia smiled and then said, such a brave satyr. Grover blushed and bowed, then said, thank you, milady. The old crone didn't seem to buy it and glared at him so hard that his chin trembled. He was scared of the old crone after all. I don't think so, Mr. Underwood. But, You will stay here. Miss Dodds forcefully said each word with anger, making Grover shrink a bit. It is okay, man. Percy said to his friend while Naruto nodded. With that, they left with Percy giving Nancy an evil glare while Naruto slowly took out a paper football, making the girl pale. Wow, that is my new brother awesome! Shouted out an excited Nico. That only made Naruto smirk. Though, when they looked back to Miss Dodds, she was already at the entrance of the museum. The boys looked at each other, thinking how the hell did she get over there so fast? Naruto got a gut feeling that this was not a good thing. No kidding, boy, sighed Artemis. Hey little sis, I think he is cool, smirked Apollo. Apollo, I am not your little sis, we are twins and I am the older one anyways. Hissed out an irritated Artemis. The boys walked to the end of the entrance, thinking that the old crone was going to make them buy a shirt to replace Nancy's wet one, but that seemed to not be the case because they walked right past the gift shop. Something is not right. How far into the museum does she need to take us to bitch at us? No, to mostly likely kill you slowly and painful, boomed Zeus. Poseidon glared at him and asked if we could continue or I will have to hit Zeus soon. Naruto thought as they walked deeper into the museum. He looked to that Percy had the same thoughts as him. Great minds think alike, commented Percy. What great mind? Mocked Talia and Annabeth. Percy pouted and Nico came over and patted him on the back and muttered, girls. Percy smiled and nodded his head in agreement. The small group made it back to the Greek and Roman gallery of the museum to find the place completely empty. They heard her growl as she looked at the marble picture of the Greek gods. Mortals, muttered all the goddesses while the female demigods nodded their heads in agreement. While the gods and male demigods looked appalled. You boys have been making trouble for us, she said suddenly. This made the boys look at her oddly. Percy was thinking about the candy he was selling while Naruto was thinking about the way he has been doing his homework and selling some of it to people who did not do theirs. Awesome, thought Percy, Nico, and Talia while Annabeth looked conflicted with a hint of disappointment. While Hermes and Apollo shouted out, we love this demigod. Meanwhile the goddesses looked disappointed and a little impressed. Well, say nothing, shouted out the male demigods, Apollo, and Hermes. I am not sure what you are talking about. Naruto replied. Yes, play the stupid card and deny everything, shouted out Nico and Percy. Ma'am, I don't, Percy started but the old crone didn't let him finish. Your time is up, she hissed ominously. Well, that was fast, everyone thought. Then the weirdness came. Her eyes began to glow like barbecue coals. Her fingers stretched into talons. Her jacket melted into large, leathery wings. She was not human, that was for sure. She was pretty much an old bitch with bat wings and claws and a mouth full of yellow fangs, and it seemed that she was the boys as her next meal. Wow, never had that description of the Furies like that before, thought Hades. Please tell me you see that too. Naruto whispered to Percy to fearfully nodded. No, you guys are just imagining it, said Talia. Good, then I am not going insane. Or are you? Asked Talia in a serious voice. That is when things got even weirder, because Mr. Brunner, who had been reading a book at the entrance, was at the entrance of the gallery with a pen and some guitar key chains in his hands. Key chains? Questioned Percy. What ho, boys? The man yelled to them as he threw the items at them. That was when the old crone lunged at Percy. Naruto, thinking fast, made a seal appear on his pants and kunai holster appeared. He then took out two of the black knives and threw them at whatever Miss Dodds had turned into. Get away from my friend, you psycho hag. Apollo and Hermes made a sign that said, Go Naruto go. While all the other occupations in the room just sighed and shook their heads. While Artemis thought, Apollo must have been adopted, or while he was a baby bragged his head repeatedly on something hard. While he had dodged that, he then saw Percy catch the pen, but the odd thing was that it had turned to a goldish sword. Riptide! Cheered the demigods. He then caught the guitar key chains in both hands in time to flip out of the way of Miss Dodd's claws. Percy's eyes widened when he saw his friend's new weapons. Wonder what the weapons are? Questioned everyone. In Naruto's right hand was a red-hilted blade, and where the blade meets the hilt was a fierce-looking fox. The blade looked to be shooting out of the mouth of the fox, and it was orange. Badass, thought Talia. The other blade was black-hilted, and instead of a fox design, it was black dragon with red eyes. The blade on it was black as well. Talia was drooling a little at how badass she would look if she had those weapons. While Ares was nodding his head in approval, Naruto rolled over to where Percy was and looked at Miss Dodds. She was getting up from her strike at Naruto and she looked pretty intimidating. Percy looked shaken by this, and it did not help that Naruto was a bit scared too. The first monster is always the toughest because of the shock, thought the demigods. He had never fought something like this before. The demigods were surprised that no monsters lived in the elemental nations and thought this would be a perfect place to live. Not counting the wars, ninjas, and tailed beasts. Then, she charged at the boys and they thought of were to stab her, and they did. Just as their blades met, the old crone burst in a shower of yellow powder. It was like she vaporized on the spot with nothing but the smell of sulfur and a dying screech that sent chills up their spines. There was an evil chill in the air, like those creepy eyes were watching their every move. Well, that is unpleasant, thought the gods. While the goddesses thought it was a little creepy. The boys were now alone in the gallery once more. They looked back to their weapons and were shocked to find something different in their possession. Percy had a gold ballpoint pen when Naruto had two black wristbands with the depicted animal on the guitar attachments on the wristbands. Wristbands is so much better than a pen because it is on your wrists instead in a pocket. Stupid no pocket gym shorts, thought Percy. Okay, Naruto said out loud, I think we should get back to the others, something odd is definitely going on here. Right. Percy is being obedient, that's new, commented Annabeth. While Percy blushed. Percy agreed when he saw that Mr. Brunner was not in the room they were in. Observing the scene, where are you and what have you done to Seaweed Brain, snorted Annabeth. Shut up, wise girl, shuddered Percy. Will you guys quit with your flirting, shouted Talia. Percy and Annabeth blushed and said you can begin now. While Aphrodite was squealing, but after 5 minutes they finally began. Back outside, it had started raining. Grover was using his museum map as a tent to keep himself from getting too wet, while Nancy was still wet from earlier. She looked to them and smirked. I hope Mrs. Kerr whipped your butts. Who? Percy let out. Our teacher. Duh. The boys blinked, asking who that was, but all she did was walk away. They asked Grover where the old crone was, but he just gave them an odd look and asked, who? But he did pause first before saying it, like he knew something was going on. Grover, you are blowing, you cover, never ever hesitate, shouted out Talia and Hermes. Not funny, man. Percy said, this is serious. He didn't answer as thunder boomed overhead. Shaking his head, Naruto led Percy over to Mr. Brunner, who was under a red umbrella reading his book, like he never moved. He looked up distracted and asked, ah, my pen and good luck charms. The best good luck charm there is, said Ares. No one of the best good luck charm would be a wheat sign and it turns into a hoe. Now how could you slay monsters with a hoe? Questioned Hades. Well, just swing with the metal part, Hades, and it will cut them, but the best part is that it could be used for farming, remarked Demeter. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson. Oh, and thank you for finding my good luck charms, Mr. Uzumaki. He said as they boys handed the items to him. Sir, Percy started. Where is Miss Dodds? Who? He said with a blank face. You know, the other chaperone, the math teacher. Naruto explained. Boys, there is now Miss Dodds on this trip, nor is there one in the school. Are you boys feeling alright? He asked concerned. Now Chiron will make those poor boys think they are crazy, said Aphrodite. Boys are crazy, remarked Artemis. Well, what if he steals one of your hunters then? Questioned Aphrodite. Then I will personally hunt him down. Screamed out Artemis. Well, I hope he does then, just to see your face, smiled Aphrodite. The boys just sighed and left, making their way back to Grover. On the way back, Naruto muttered out, I think we just entered the Twilight Zone. Everyone laughed because the blonde was different, alright, but in a good way. Anyways, so who wants to read next? Just in Community Forum. More. Reading NPU by Shadow Gods of the Fallen. Naruto and Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Zover rated. M. English. Words. 160k plus. Faves. 1k plus. Follows. 1k plus. Published. June 1, 2013. Updated. January 14, 2018. 392. Chapter 3. And I will properly update every week maximum, and the beginning and ending of the chapter is always the hardest. I had to do the ACT, it was boring and stupid. Means thought or thinking. Means saying or speaking out loud. Bold means the story. Now let's get this story started. Suddenly it got dark with storm clouds and you could hear thunder rumbling throughout the sky. Then lightning flashed in the once peaceful blue sky. Until a powerful lightning bolt hit the throne room with enough power to create a shock wave. When the dust died down, the demigods could look where the flash of lightning originated from. In its wake there was a cloaked figure that was undoubtedly a female and could see her mouth. One reason is because you could see her chest and her body curves. Apollo, Hermes, and Ares wanted to know who this mystery woman was because they were drooling and blushing. Acting like total lovesick fools just because of her body figure and power she showed. Of course, Zeus, being Zeus, had to demand who she was and how she got here. Why are you here and why have you come? Boomed Zeus. She bowed and smiled while saying, Father. Zeus looked confused and shocked but said, How are you, my daughter? She smiled, which made most of the male population blush. Zeus looked at her and nodded but then asked to remove the hood. The mystery female sighed but nodded her head. She grabbed her hood and pulled it down and it revealed Talia. Zeus then looked at her and muttered, How is this possible? But waved his hand to let her begin her introduction. In a beautiful voice that left all the males breathless she said, Talia Grace, daughter of Zeus and girlfriend to Naruto Uzumaki. Wait, now there are two of me for double the awesomeness, smiled Talia. Thals just smiled and nodded her head in agreement. But just call me Thals. It took a moment for Zeus to get what her last words to her introduction. His eyes flashed and he shouted out to the heavens, My daughter, you stay away from that son of Hades. But Aphrodite screamed loudly saying, I love myself with all these romances. Then the love goddess thought, I will have to ask about other romances in that dimension, and maybe I can beat myself. The love goddess smiled with a little evil glint in her pretty eyes. The rest of the relations after Thal's introduction got were opened mouth and widened eyes. But only two other people had another expressions on their faces. Were Annabeth, whose face looked like a Christmas tree or that Christmas came early. The second person was her mother Athena that had a glint in her cloudy gray eyes. She looked at the book and read the title, then smiled while whispering, Naruto. The people in the throne room questioned, who is going to read next, and Talia that just came raised her hand. So the Zeus passed her the book and she began. Life after the freak show. When is it not? Remarked Talia. Just look at Seaweed Brain over there. Continue. Annabeth teasingly pointed at Percy. Percy huffed and said, Wow, I have such good friends. You and Naruto are great friends, replied Thals. Went on like normal, well as normal as it could get in this school. Because you have Percy there, taunted Nico. Percy looked at his fellow demigods and muttered, what is it pick on Percy Day? For the rest of the year both the boys were a bit put off by the revelation that Miss Dodds never existed. In her place was a perky blonde woman named Mrs. Kerr. When either of the boys would ask something about the old hag, people just looked at the like they were nuts. That you kelp head, seaweed brain, shouted out Talia, Thals and Annabeth. Naruto, however, did like the new teacher thought. She was a refreshing change from the old crone. Every immortal in the throne room gave a small smile and thought this book just might be unendurable than they thought. Though everyone else seemed to not even know what the hell they were talking about, Grover seemed like he did. Grover! Shouted out the demigods. He would always hesitate before denying it though. He was such a bad liar. Very true, said Percy, Hermes, and Apollo. Something was going on. They knew that something had happened at the museum. Very observant, remarked Athena while Annabeth just nodded her head and smiling. Anyway, that freak storm continued and one time it blew out the windows in Percy's apartment. Wow, Zeus must be mad, said Poseidon. No, serious, I didn't know that, snorted Hades. Enough, boomed out Zeus, who by the way was looking really irritated. Luckily, Naruto offered him a place to stay until things were fixed and ready to go at his place. Ah, such a nice boy, I have made my decision that he will definitely have a great love life, screamed out Aphrodite. A few days later, the biggest tornado ever spotted in the Hudson Valley touched down only 50 from Yancey Academy. Now Zeus, you know you can't endanger millions of people will your petty tantrums, spat out Hera, still a little resentful for the fact Zeus cheated on her. In at least 2 dimensions and 2 times with the same woman. Yes dear, Zeus said in a fearful voice. Which was scary in itself. Luckily they didn't get hurt. That's good, everyone thought. Percy started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. His grades slipped from D's to F's. Perseus Jackson, how dare you? Screamed out Annabeth. What was his reaction? Trying to find anything to hiding behind anywhere that Annabeth couldn't see him. But it was too late for that because she stormed over to him and demanded never to have failing grades like that ever again. Everyone besides the two thought, poor Percy, especially Zeus, because he knows what is on the receiving end of a woman's fury. He got into more fights with Nancy Bobofit and her friends. Way to go, punk, shouted out Ares. Everyone else sighed but said nothing. He was sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Naruto was in some of his class. He was feeling the same way. He stayed under control, most of the time. I wonder what would happen if he lost complete control, thought everyone in the throne room. Something odd was going on and they were somehow affected, and it was getting really annoying. Though when Percy got in trouble for calling their English teacher an old sot, whatever that meant, the school sent a letter his mom, Sally, trailed off Poseidon, telling her that Percy would not be allowed back next year. The boy's mood lifted. As the punk homesick and a mama's boy, you are such a weakling, mocked Ares. Percy was biting his tongue but was going to shout at the god of war, but a voice beat him to the punch. Ares, do not mock the boy, unlike you he actually cares about his mother, unlike a certain someone. Howled Hera while glaring at him and to see if he would oppose her. He didn't. Percy and the other demigods stored this information not to mock the relationship of mother to child ever if Hera was in hearing distance. But just a little bit. Naruto could tell Percy missed his mom because he hated that fact that she was with Gabe of all people. Could the goddesses well expect Artemis and Athena? He is so thoughtful to his mother, screamed out Aphrodite. Yes, how I wish I could have a child like that, replied Hera with a hint of envy. The kid was homesick, No surprise there. Naruto sighed. He came to reality. Exam week was come up soon and he, like Percy and Grover, had to study. Like Shikamaru says, it is going to be troublesome. Very, muttered the demigods. Expect of course Annabeth. Who by the way was glaring at each one of them. The night before the exams started, Naruto and Percy decided to have a study session at Percy's dorm. Percy having a party, shouted out Hermes, Apollo, Talia and the male demigods. No, shouted out the goddesses and Annabeth with equal force as the males with the treasure aka Talia. Now Annabeth was really glaring at her fellow demigods because studying was really important to her. Throughout the night, Naruto could see that Percy was getting more and more agitated. Well yeah, it's Percy for you, said Talia. Percy looked in her direction and sighed while mumbling out, stupid annoying cousin. Finally he threw his book across the room. Perseus Jackson, that is not how you treat a book. Screamed out Annabeth. Sorry, hopeful it wouldn't happen again, but I would not count on that, replied Percy. Temper, Naruto commented, trying liven up the atmosphere. Sorry, but how the hell am I supposed to know the difference, Chiron and Karen? Simple. One has an I and the other has an A in their name. Very true, muttered Athena and Annabeth. Naruto smartly said with smirk. Percy slapped his face and gave Naruto a glare. Okay, let me help you then. Chiron, the one with the I, is half horse and trains heroes. Chiron is much better than Karen, shouted out all the demigods. Then we have Karen, the one with the A, he is the ferryman of the dead who is a greed ass. Naruto is right, he is very greedy, Thal said dreamily. How would you know this, daughter? Questioned Zeus. Because I met him before, replied Thals. The dude loves Olympian money. Very true, said Hades. Is that how you remember everything? Give it a short description and or insult them. That is a good way to learn. I never thought about it like that, remarked Percy. You would be a natural because you love to insult stuff, spoke Nico and Talia. Percy asked while trying to hide a smirk. Hey, easier for me to remember stuff like that. Naruto smiled. But my way might be best for you. It is, thought Percy. Everyone has a different way of remembering stuff. Yeah, Percy said. I can't believe I am saying this, but I think I should go see Mr. Brunner. He might have a way that is good for me. Want me to come? Naruto asked. Ah, he is so thoughtful, cooed Aphrodite. Yeah, so I don't feel like a total idiot going down there. Percy replied and got up to get his book. That's right, respect the book, spoke Annabeth. Naruto just laughed. They walked downstairs to the faculty offices. Most of them were dark and empty, but S door was ajar, light from his window stretching across the hallway floor. They were 3 steps from the door handle when the duo heard voices inside the office. Mr. Brunner. He must be talking to Grover, said Percy. Why would you know that? Questioned Annabeth. Because that is what he was talking about when I went down there, remarked Percy. Asked a question. A voice that was definitely Grover's said, worried about Percy and Naruto, sir. Well yeah, I would too if it was my kid, thought the Olympians. The boys froze at that. They nodded and leaned in to eavesdrop, not that they did it a lot, but when a friend is talking about you to a teacher, you'd want to what was going on. Alone this summer. No, Percy is going with Naruto, said Aphrodite. Grover was saying. I mean, a kindly one in the school. Now that we know for sure, and they know too. We would only make matters worse by rushing them, Mr. Brunner said. We need the boys to mature more. You are going to wait for a long time for Percy, but I am not sure about Naruto, remarked Talia. No, Naruto is very mature but can be childish at times when needed to lighten the mood, replied Thals. But he may not have time. The summer solstice deadline will have to be resolved without them, Grover. Let him enjoy his ignorance while he still can. Sir, they saw her. Their imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted. The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince them of that. But the mist doesn't always fool demigods unless it is really powerful, said Athena. But they are figuring out who they are and very soon they will come to their destiny sooner or later, Athena continued on. Sir, I can't fail in my duties again. Quit blaming yourself over that goat boy, it was my decision anyways, shouted out Talia. No, he is right, it is his fault that you died, daughter, angrily said Zeus. No, it is not, Dad, shouted Thales and Talia. Grover's voice was choked with emotion. You know what that would mean. Failure like you failed my daughter, cracked Zeus. You haven't failed, Grover, Mr. Brunner said kindly. I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just worry about keeping Percy and Naruto alive until next fall. Which is going to difficult because of Percy's heroics, smiled Talia. Naruto too, but luckily they have Annabeth and I, snorted Thales. The mythology book that Percy had brought with him fell to the floor. No, don't ever give away your position to the enemy, shouted out Hermes. That could be dangerous, punk, sneered Ares. And Naruto's eyes widened in panic as all went silent. As soon as Percy grabbed the book, Naruto grabbed Percy and they ran for it. Good thinking, Naruto, leave no evidence behind, muttered Hermes. Percy saw something larger than Mr. Brunner come out of the room. He steered them to a nearby room to hide for a bit. A few seconds later they heard a slow clop clop clop, like muffled wood blocks, then a sound like an animal snuffling right outside the door. A large, dark shape paused in front of the glass, and then moved on. Naruto, of course you are imagining it, joked Nico. Shut it, Nico, snapped Thales. Okay, already sorry, said Nico. Both the boys were sweating, that was too close. Naruto can't ever get caught if he really tried, laughed Thales. Somewhere in the hallway, Mr. Brunner spoke. Nothing, he murmured. My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice. Mine neither, Grover said. But I could have sworn. Always trust your judgment, said Thales, Annabeth, and Athena. No, all you need is power, cried out Ares. No, strategy outweighs power always, Ares, screamed Athena. No, it does not, screamed back Ares. Silence and continue the book, boomed Zeus. Go back to the dorm, Mr. Brunner told him. You've got a long day of exams tomorrow. I feel sorry for him for doing the exams year after year, went through the minds of all the demigods besides Annabeth. Don't remind me. They heard Grover whine. When the lights went off in Mr. Brunner's office went off, they bolted out of the room they were hiding like a bat out hell. When they made it back to Percy's dorm, he locked the door. Good thinking, brats, so now the only way a monster can get in now is a forced entry, said Ares. Thales looked at him weirdly because he never ever compliance Percy. But she quickly thought Ares has nothing against Percy right now. Okay, now we know for sure something is going on. Yeah, but what and who would want us dead? Most monsters and some immortals that you piss off, if you are unlucky, thought the demigods. Like Ares, whispered Thales. I mean, they talked as if someone was after us. There, said the demigods while the gods and goddesses nodded their heads. Naruto pondered. Hey, you can stay the night. Percy said. I mean, you're the ninja here and if anything happens we would have a better chance at surviving. Fine with me, Naruto said. He then sighed. I just hope we survive the exams. Were they hard, Percy? Questioned Nico. Not really. Who are you and what have you done to my cousin? Shouted Nico, Talia. You didn't let me finish. As I was saying, if you were trying to fail. Oh, that explains it, never mind. While the rest of the occupation in the room sighed and shook their heads or laughed out loud. While Annabeth and Athena glared at Percy, making him very uncomfortable. Percy paled and then hung his head, once again reminded of the exams and why they went down there in the first place. I am so screwed. Yup you are, said Percy. Just then Grover walked in like nothing had happened. Hey, how are you guys doing on the studying? When they both hung their heads and didn't say anything, he got worried. You guys okay? Naruto answered, yep, we are so screwed. Percy definitely, but I don't think Naruto is, remarked Talia. Hey, exclaimed Percy. Well, it's true, commented Talia. Properly, after a few seconds of thinking on Percy's part. The next afternoon, they finally got out of their 3-hour Latin exam. 3 hours of that madness. Naruto complained, tests back home were never like this. I want to go there now because there are easier tests, complained Percy. Will you give it a rest, seaweed brain, replied Annabeth. But wise girl, think about it, you get to look at the different culture, said Percy. Now Annabeth had to do a double take on what Percy said again, but smiled then nodded her head. Hestia coughed softly and spoke, may I begin again? Percy and Annabeth just nodded their heads while looking at their shoes in thought. My eyes are swimming with all the Greek and Roman names that I misspelled. Hey Perce, what did you misspell? Asked Nico. Well, I misspelled my brother Theseus and Hephaestus to name a few, replied Percy. Percy complained as he held his head. Unfortunately, Mr. Brunner called them back in. Percy, he said, don't be discouraged about leaving Yancey. It's for the best. He then turned to Naruto and asked, what about you? Well, I am split between staying here for Grover's sake or going wherever Percy goes so he won't be the only new kid. So kind, and I think he will grow up to be a very handsome man with a lot of girls, squealed Aphrodite. He will just be an arrogant man, I just hope no hunters falls for him, thought Artemis. Oh, and don't worry, I am used to hopping around. Mostly hopping dimensions, but you don't need to know that. When they were talking, Percy was getting annoyed by the Nancy Bobofit who, like some others, was still taking the test. I see. Mr. Brunner commented. I guess this place is not the right place for you boys then. It'd only a matter of time. Wow, Chiron give my boyfriend a lasting impression, growled out Thals. Daughter, you must find a different romantic interest, boomed Zeus. Thals just rolled her eyes and tried to ignore her father. Thals then said, can we please get back to the book, because the sooner we are done the sooner I can see my boyfriend. Zeus looked infuriated because he was ignored and decided to talk to his daughter later. Naruto glanced at Percy sadly to see that Percy was upset. I mean, his favorite teacher at this dump of a school and in front of a whole freaking class, was telling him that he couldn't handle it here. Chiron really needs to work on his pre-talks, muttered Percy, remembering that day. Yeah, he does, said Annabeth, Thals and Talia. This made Naruto pissed off. One thing you should know, never piss off Naruto unless you have a death wish, smiled Thals. Percy was his best friend in this land after all. No, Mr. Brunner said. Oh, confound it all. What I'm trying to say, you're not normal, Percy, and neither are you, Naruto. Well, he is my boyfriend, said Thals. I will not get used to you having a boyfriend, Thals, said Annabeth. Well, you should get used to it because it is going to be mentioned a lot in those books, I think, grinned Thals. That's nothing to be. Thanks, I blurted. Thanks a lot, sir, for reminding me. Percy, he called out, but Percy was already out the door. Naruto looked from the door to Mr. Brunner and scowled. Way to choose your words, Mr. Brunner. Naruto said as he left to chase after his friend. He is such a loyal friend, whispered Hestia. The goddesses just nodded their heads in agreement. On the last day of the term, Naruto watched as Percy shoved his clothes into his suitcase. They listened to the other guys brag about where they were going this summer. Pigs just like Apollo, snarled out Artemis. Apollo put on a fake smile and shouted out, little sis. She is definitely won't like what happens to Zoe, thought Thals. Those idiots may be juvenile delinquents, but they were also rich juvenile delinquents. One of them asked Percy and Naruto where they were going. My home in the city for the summer. Percy replied. Same here, Naruto said, scaring Percy since he did know he had arrived yet. When did you get here? Percy asked while the others went back to what they were doing, as if the two didn't exist since they were nobodies to them. Hey Percy, Naruto and I are not nobodies, that is only Annabeth, called out Thals. Annabeth blushed but then glared at Thals. Hey, a few minutes ago man, chuckled Naruto. Oh, Percy replied. So remind me again why I am going with you to your place for the day. Naruto said. Probably staying with me so he can at least control me next to Gabe, said Percy. The demigods besides Thals just looked at him with questionable looks. Well, you can tell I have been a bit peeved lately and you usually help out when I am in a bad mood. I wonder what he will do to Gabe, thought Percy. So, I guess I need you to keep me in check because Gabe is going to really piss me off. He will unfortunately, drawn out Percy. Annabeth looked at Percy with a hint of concern in her storm gray eyes. Noted. Naruto commented, and then his eyes lit up. You know, I live right in the middle. You know, from your apartment to the school. I just noticed that. Hey Thals, do I still play Mythomagic cards? Questioned Nico. Yes, Death Breath you do with your sister, said Thals. Wait, I have a sister, exclaimed Nico. You will have to wait and see, called back Thals. Nico pouted but nodded his head. Good. Then you can come over more often. Percy mumbled as they left the school dorms to get on a bus, though he was wondering how Naruto got from his home to school in time for class. Must be a ninja thing. I want to know how he does it, screamed out Athena and Annabeth. When is the next fighting scene coming up because this is boring, grinned Ares. Enough talking for now. Zeus raised his master bolt in the air and then slammed his bolt onto the floor making Olympus shake a little. Both boys were dreading how they were going to say goodbye to Grover but luckily for them, he was on the bus they were on. The whole bus ride, they saw that Grover was very fidgety, like he was expecting something to come out the works to come after him or us. Grover, whatever you do don't blow your cover, cheered the demigods in the room. He was like this every time they left the school campus, odd. Though Percy was getting annoyed by it and he blurted out, looking for kindly ones. Naruto smacked his head while Grover nearly jumped out of his seat. Hey Percy, how far did he jump? Questioned Nico. I would say a good foot, replied Percy. Wah. What do you mean? They boy confessed about eavesdropping on his and Mr. Brunner's conversation the night before the exams. No, deny everything Grover says, shouted out Hermes. Grover's eye twitched. How much did you hear? Oh, not much. What's the summer solstice deadline? Percy asked. Wait, what deadline? Questioned all the immortals. The demigods just looked at the gods with a knowing look that infuriated them. And is that too much for you? Naruto smirked. Naruto always has to get the last word in or has to be a smartass, smiled Thals. He winced. Look, guys, I was just worried for you, see? I mean, hallucinating about demon math teachers. Grover, dude. And I was telling Mr. Brunner that maybe you guys were overstressed or something, because there was no such person as Mrs. Dodds, and dude, you suck at lying. Grover does suck at lying, admitted all the demigods and the immortals nodded their heads in agreement. Naruto blurted out making Grover sputter and his ear turn pink. From his shirt pocket, he fished out a couple of grubby business cards. Just take this, okay? In case you need me this summer. The card was in fancy script, which was murder on their dyslexic eyes, but they finally made out something like. Why is it always in fancy script? Thought the demigods. Grover Underwood, keeper. Best keeper in the history of Camp Half-Blood, cheered out all the demigods. He can't be a good keeper if he lets my daughter die, boomed Zeus. Zeus, will you give it a rest? Hera screamed out against her unfaithful husband. Half-Blood Hill. Where my daughter's imprisonment? Zeus thought darkly. Long Island, New York. 800-009-0009. What's half? Percy started. Don't say it aloud, he yelped. That's my, summer address. I miss camp, thought all of the demigods. While the gods and goddesses looked away in shame, thinking about all the times they missed in their children's lives throughout the ages. That made Naruto's eyes roll. There was something really odd going on, that was for sure. Percy looked a little sad that even Grover had a summer home like the other people at school. Of course not Seaweed Brain, he is not normal like your everyday person, laughed Annabeth. At least Naruto is like me and lives close. Okay, he said glumly. So, if I want to come visit your mansion. Sorry to break this to you, Percy, but the woods are the big house is not a mansion, said Thalls. I know that now, Thalls, snapped Percy. While rolling his eyes and whispering about annoying cousins. Thalls, Talia, Nico just grinned at Percy's misfortune. He nodded. Or if you need me. Why would I need you? Percy growled out harshly, surprising even Naruto. Properly not one of your best moments, huh, Seaweed Brain, Annabeth whispered to Percy. Her voice was so soft that only the two could hear it, and Percy just nodded his head sadly. Grover blushed right down to his Adam's apple. Look, Percy, the truth is, I kind of have to protect you, both of you, he said, making the boys look at him oddly. I mean, they were the one who had to protect him in the school. Grover, Percy said, what exactly are you protecting us from? Oh, nothing at all, muttered Thalls. Before he could answer, there was a huge grinding noise under our feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard and the whole bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. That is not good, muttered Hephaestus. Gross, screeched out Aphrodite. When will there be action, because this book is starting to be boring, screamed Ares. Shut up, Ares, so we can learn more about this book and what happens, shouted out Athena. The driver cursed and limped the Greyhound bus over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced that they'd all have to get off. Percy, Naruto, and Grover filed outside with everybody else. They were on a stretch of country road, no place you'd notice if you didn't break down there. A little too convent, remarked Athena while Annabeth just nodded her head in agreement. On our side of the highway was nothing but maple trees and litter from passing cars. On the other side, across 4 lanes of asphalt shimmering with afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. Fruit? Screamed out a happy Demeter. Shut up, women, no one cares about fruit or cereal for that matter, said Hades. Demeter gasped and looked a little hurt at Hades' hurtful words. Hades had the decency to look ashamed for his little outburst. Talk about being in the middle of nowhere, Naruto commented while hitting the back of his head on the bus. Hey Thalls, does your boyfriend always do that? Questioned Nico. Not really, only when he does something really stupid, replied Thalls. Raising an eyebrow, he took a look at the fruit stand on the other side of the street. The stuff on sale looked really good. Heaping boxes of blood-red cherries and apples, walnuts and apricots, jugs of cider in a claw-foot tub full of ice. That does sound good, thought all the occupant in the room. There were no customers, just 3 old ladies sitting in rocking chairs in the shade of a maple tree, knitting the biggest pair of socks they'd ever seen. Wait, aren't they the Fates? Shouted out Annabeth. After she said that comment, all things went down the drain. Annabeth glared and yelling at Percy while Thalls glared at nothing but empty space. while muttering how she was going to kill her boyfriend when she sees him again. These were no ordinary socks, they were as big as sweaters. Apollo just laughed to break the tense in the silent throne room. Who wears socks that big? The lady on the right knitted one of them. The lady on the left knitted the other. The lady in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. All three women looked ancient. They are ancient, shouted out the gods and goddesses. With pale faces wrinkled like fruit leather, silver hair tied back in white bandanas, bony arms sticking out of bleached cotton dresses. So why do they dress like that? Questioned Annabeth. I don't know, daughter. Maybe to blend in, said Athena. Annabeth just nodded her head, agreeing with her mother. The creepy thing is that they were staring right at Percy and Naruto. Thals and Annabeth just looked murderous at both Percy and Naruto for not telling them. While the love goddess just smiled, feeling the love in the air coming from Thals and Annabeth. Talk about creepy. Naruto commented. Hey Grover, whatever Naruto was going to ask died in his throat. Hopeful not literally, groaned Thals. The deities and half-bloods just nodded their heads in agreement. You okay, man? Percy asked when he saw Grover's face. They looked at Grover to see that all the color had drained out of him, that and his nose was twitching. Tell me, are they looking at you too? They aren't they? Yeah. Weird, huh? You think those socks would fit me? Asked Percy in a joking manner. This is no time for joking around, seaweed brain, yelled Annabeth. Not likely. Naruto replied, getting really freaked out. I don't think they would even fit the fattest priest. More like Gabe than anything else, thought Percy. Not funny, you two. Not funny at all. Grover whined. The satyr is right, came Athena's voice. Mother, the satyr has a name, he is called Grover Underwood, shouted out Annabeth. What is eating you? Naruto asked. Grover only pointed to the old ladies. The old lady in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long-bladed, like shears. They heard Grover catch his breath. Just like everyone in the throne room. We're getting on the bus, he told them. Come on. What? Percy said. It's 1,000 degrees in there. Didn't stop you from going inside a volcano, snapped Annabeth. Percy had the decency to blush and look down at his shoes. You actually like the heat, Grover? Naruto asked, complained. No, he would not like the heat, said Annabeth and Percy. They blushed and looked away from each other. Aphrodite squealed and shouted out, love is in the air. The other gods and goddesses just out of place and struggled it off. Come on. He pried open the door and climbed inside while the duo stayed back for a bit. Are you stupid, seaweed brain, Kelfeed? Shouted out Annabeth to Leah. When I get my hands on my boyfriend, threatened Thals, but was cut off by Zeus. Across the road, the old ladies were still watching them. The middle one cut the yarn, which they could hear that snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Well, they are as good as dead, Ares laughed. Shut up, screeched Thals. She then shot a powerful lightning bolt at the war god. He dodged but didn't see the second lightning bolt until it was too late. Ares blacked out due to pain while the demigods and the other gods looked at Thals with widened eyes. Her 2 friends balled up the electric blue socks, leaving me wondering who they could possibly be for, probably for Bigfoot or the man in the moon. Naruto rolled his eyes and climbed into the bus. Come on, let go see Grover before he pisses himself. Grover knows that it marks the end of a life, said Annabeth to the other demigods. While the demigods just nodded their heads. At the rear of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment, the bus shuddered, and the engine roared back to life and everyone cheered. If they knew what they were actually cheering for, then they would be crying, said Athena. Darn right, yelled the driver. He slapped the bus with his hat. Everybody back on board. Oh, just in time. Naruto drawled as he walked to the back with Percy. Once the bus got going, Percy got all feverish like he got the flu. Poseidon looked pained that his son might die in that dimension, while Thal's worried about Naruto because that string that was just cut might be his. While Naruto started sweating and complaining about the heat. Language Naruto, all the goddesses shouted out. Grover was not any better, but he was chattering his teeth like he was cold. Grover? Asked Percy. Yeah, what are you not telling us? A lot, muttered everyone in the throne room besides Ares because he was knocked out still. Grover dabbed his forehead with his shirt sleeve. Percy, what did you two see back at the fruit stand? Someone dying, groaned Hades. Some of the gods looked at Hades questioningly. The Lord of the Dead sighed, then said the underworld is too crowded. A few old ladies with way too much time on their hand. Naruto replied while putting a hand on his forehead and wiping off the sweat. Yeah. Percy smirked but lost it at Grover's serious face. Wait, they're not like Miss Dodds, are they? Much worse, young one, whispered Hestia. The demigods looked kind of sad thinking about someone is going to die. But alas, that is a life of a mortal. The look he gave them made it seem worse. What could be worse? A lot of things actually, croaked out the gods and goddesses. Just tell me what you saw. The middle one took out her scissors, and she cut the yarn. Someone is doomed, sadly croaked Hestia with some tears in her eyes. Ares' eyes opened and his glance made its way to Thal's before glaring at her with hate-filled eyes. Percy shrugged, like it was nothing. Grover closed his eyes and made a gesture with his fingers that might have been crossing himself. But it wasn't. It was something else, something almost older. Very observant, smiled Athena. Now that is odd, he said. You saw her snip the cord. Yeah, so, Percy replied, getting the feeling like it was something big. It's seaweed brain, said Annabeth. Well, sorry, wise girl, smiled Percy. Sea spawn, growled Athena. Don't call my son that, owl head, growled Poseidon. This is not happening, Grover mumbled. He started chewing at his thumb. I don't want this to be like the last time. What last time? My daughter got turned into a tree, snarled Zeus. But she was never supposed to exist in the first place, Hera glared at Zeus. The boys asked, getting freaked out as much as Grover was now. That's impossible, joked Percy. Everyone smiled at the son of Poseidon and focused back to the book. Always 6th grade. They never get past 6th. Grover mumbled to himself again. Grover, Percy said, because he was really starting to get scared. What are you talking about? Let me walk you two home from the bus station. Promise me. That is kind of creepy, smiled Apollo and Hermes. Man are creepy, stupid, and weird, sneered Artemis. Now little sis, laughed Apollo. Don't call me that. How many eons do I have to remind you I was born first, snarled Artemis. Apollo looked hurt but said nothing. Now it was Artemis' turn to feel ashamed and whispered, sorry. Apollo looked happy now and shouted out, it's okay, sister. This seemed like a strange request, but they promised he could. Geez, Percy, never know you swung that way, laughed both Apollo and Hermes. Percy glared at them while a bright blush spread on his face. The son of Poseidon said, screw you. Apollo and Hermes said, you have just proven our point now. Poseidon got off his throne and walked over to Percy. He patted his shoulder and said, Percy, it's okay to be different. Percy just blushed harder and shouted out, I am not gay. Annabeth glared at both gods and said, you idiots, stop messing around with everything. Artemis and the other goddesses just nodded in agreement. It is no problem, I am going over to his place anyway. Naruto replied. Is this like a superstition or something? Percy asked, but got no answer. Grover, that snipping of the yarn. Does that mean somebody is going to die? He looked at the two mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers that would be best on their coffins. That is when the cogs of Naruto's mind started churning in rapidly. The things that have been happening lately in all the Greek mythology they had been learning finally caught up to him. Those three old crones were something that he paled at. Oh crap. What? Percy said, freaked out that Naruto was scared now. Neji was right, fate, or in this case fates do exist. Naruto replied, while Percy and Grover gawked at him. Gabe is PWNED and Grover is a what? Said Annabeth while looking a little confused. The rest of bus ride they listened to Grover freak out to himself the whole way. That must have been annoying, grumbled Thals and Talia. They both smiled but said nothing afterwards. So it was not a surprise that when it was over that Grover had to go to the can. You see, when Grover get upset, his bladder act up. He is properly calling Chiron on a status report, said Annabeth confidently. So when Grover went to the bathroom at the bus station, the boys quickly got away. Genius, remarked Hermes. No, it is not, you dimwit, screamed out the goddesses in the throne room. While Annabeth was glaring at Percy for leaving Grover behind. Percy hailed a cab and they jumped in. East 104th and 1st, Percy told the driver. While Naruto made the shadow clone hand sign. Such a nice boy, I wonder if he likes farming and cereal, or, he can't have been Hades' son because he is so good, muttered Demeter. While Hades thought, dear gods help my son against my sister, mother-in-law. Percy looked at him oddly when nothing happened. What was that about? As the yellow cab drove them away from the bus station, Naruto replied, I made one outside. You know Grover will freak out as he had been about not being able to protect you. You got that right, seaweed brain, frowned Annabeth but after a while smiled at Percy. Besides, I think it is time he knows what I can do. He properly does, everyone in the room said. Percy gave Naruto a small smile and said, you know you are going to give him a heart attack. Just one, not too big, smiled Percy. Seaweed brain, that was uncalled for, screamed out Annabeth. I was just kidding, wise girl, smiled Percy. Annabeth blushed while Athena glared daggers at the sea spawn as she called it. Naruto gave Percy a smirk as they traveled to his mom's apartment. Along the way, Percy told Naruto all about his mom. She is the best mom in the world, screamed Percy at the top of his lungs. Poseidon smiled dreamily thinking about Sally Jackson. Truly a queen among women, thought the sea god. While Thals, Talia, Nico, and Annabeth nodded their heads happily. Athena just smiled thinking her favorite daughter has a great mother figure. My mom's name is Sally Jackson and she is the best person in the world. You got that right, said Thals to Talia. That also proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck. Percy said as Naruto nodded, having heard that from him a few weeks ago. It true, said everyone in the throne room. Grover got out of the bathroom and looked around for Percy and Naruto. He only saw Naruto with his arms crossed. Hey Naruto, where is Percy? He is going to freak out when he hears this, thought Annabeth. Everyone else just wait impatiently for the upcoming reaction of the satyr. He went home. Naruto replied, making Grover's eyes widen. Don't worry though, I am with him. That is going to confuse the poor dear, muttered Demeter. He deserves it, that disgrace of a satyr, grumbled Zeus. Father, will you quit blaming Grover about the decision I made? Cried out Talia. Thals said nothing but nodded her head in agreement nonetheless. What? How can that be possible? You are right here. Grover freaked. Shadow clone, sang Thals. Grover, Mr. Brunner was right. Percy is not normal and in a sense, neither am I. You got that right, he is not normal, snorted out the loss. Why? questioned Percy. It's in the book Kelp Head, smiled Thals. Naruto explained, making Grover sweat under the blonde's gaze. Weird shit has been going on lately, and it has been going on most of Percy's life. Me on the other hand, I think that stuff is a bit normal. You would think that, Naruto, thought Thals. The thing with people trying to kill you. Naruto then looked around them to see that the bus station was completely empty, everyone had left a while ago. I know I am not normal because I have powers that normal humans don't have. You got that right, Captain Obvious, laughed Thals. The other demigods just smiled and wished some of their other friends came to read. Remember that, Grover, because that helped me protect Percy like you want. Grover is going to be grateful to you for helping keep Seaweed Brain alive, smiled Annabeth. Hey, I am not that bad, am I? Questioned Percy. Yeah, you are, Kelp Head, said Talia and Thals. Nico just smirked sadly but moved his mouth, saying, You are on your own, man. He said nothing because you should never ever go against an argument with a woman. The end result is that you are going to lose badly. Naruto's form them faltered a bit before it went up in a hail of shadows flying into the nearby shadows. Grover had a look of pure shock on his face. No way. So he has figured it out then? Questioned the gods and goddesses. I believe so, replied Thals. The demigod duo made it to Percy's apartment and paid. Percy looked up at the apartment nervously and said, Naruto, are you sure want to come in? Smelly Gabe is a real jerk and he will not be any different to you. Naruto will be fine, but I can't say anything about Gabe, said Thals. Percy smiled but said nothing. Naruto smiled with a bit of annoyance. Yeah, Percy. You told me about your mom and all her history, and I still can't figure why she is with this Gabe. He is so loyal and kind, thought Hestia. How the Hades can Hades be the father of this sweet young caring boy? Demanded Demeter. Hades just glared at his sister, mother-in-law again. Don't worry, I won't anger him much. Always be cunning, my son, fondly thought Hades. Uncle Hades, can I adopt Naruto please? Begged Hermes. No, said Hades in an emotionless tone, but on the inside was grinning like a madman. I am getting a bad feeling about this, Percy said as they entered the building, hoping his mom would be home from work. No, she was not, sadly thought Percy, thinking back on that fateful day. But decided to listen more to see if anything changed in this dimension. Instead, Smelly Gabe was in the living room, playing poker with his buddies. The television blared ESPN. Chips and beer cans were strewn all over the carpet. Nope, same old, angrily thought Percy. Wow, it is worse than I expected. At least I agree with him, smiled Percy. The gods and goddesses looked disgusted but said nothing. Naruto thought with a deadpanned expression. Hardly looking up, Gabe said around his cigar, So, you're home, who is your loser friend? He is not a loser, he is my son, an anger Hades thought. The other demigods thought the same thing and all of them became vocal about it. Like Thal's thinking, just wait until the girls back home hear about this, and started to giggle to herself. Or Nico thinking about, Gabe is going to pay for insulting his older brother. Percy frowned and angrily thought, how much of an asshole Gabe was. Next came Annabeth with strategies for making Gabe miserable in life. Then came time for Talia with ways to violate. To describe some of the ways were not limited to getting his balls chopped off and getting chased by wildlife, or even cutting off his manhood and choking him with it. Naruto, where's my mom? Percy replied shortly. Properly trying to support this ugly piece of shit, snarled out Hades, Poseidon, Artemis, and surprisingly Aphrodite. Working, he said. You got any cash? That made Percy rolled his eyes. What, no, welcome back. Good to see you. How has your life been the last 6 months? Figures. A great example of a disgusting male, sneered out Artemis. Percy just nodded his head in agreement. Percy noticed that Gabe had put on weight. He looked like a tuskless walrus in thrift store clothes. Wow, that is so him, whispered Percy, then he smiled. He had about 3 hairs on his head, all combed over his bald scalp, as if that made him handsome or something. Ah, my eyes and ears it burns, thought all individuals in the throne room. After a little while, so they can calm down from that traumatic event. Aphrodite shouted out, even I couldn't even possible make him presentable for the girls to be interested in. So you wouldn't date him? Questioned out Artemis. No way in Hades would I touch him, not even if he was the last male on earth, said a horror-filled voice of the love goddesses. The other goddesses just nodded their heads in agreement wholeheartedly. But Artemis continued on asking, and why is that? Because I have at least some dignity and self-control, shuddered Aphrodite just thinking about it. Artemis just snorted, but in the back of her mind the respect for Aphrodite went up a notch or two. But would never admit it to her face or other relatives ever. This guy managed the electronics mega mart in Queens, but he stayed home most of the time. Of course can't do anything, can he? Thought everyone in the throne room, and then sighed. It was a wonder why he hadn't been fired long before. He just kept on collecting paychecks, spending the money on cigars that made Percy nauseous, and on beer, of course. Do you think Perseus was hit? Questioned Hestia. If my son was hit, then that mortal will face my wrath, an infuriated Poseidon shouted out. Everyone just held their breath waiting for the book to explain. Always beer. A growl escaped the sea god with worry for his son and past lover. Whenever Percy was home, he expected him to provide his gambling funds. That's outrageous, disgusting, snarled out all the goddesses. The female demigods just nodded their heads in agreement, while the gods and rest of the demigods just stood quietly but had a look of anger in their eyes. He called that their guy's secret. Meaning, if he told his mom, he would punch his lights out. The throne room shook violently and the earth was suffering the worst natural disasters the world has experienced before. Like hurricanes, flash floods, earthquakes and tsunamis to name a few, until a large enraged voice came. That disgusting mortal, how dare he touch my son, screamed out Poseidon. Zeus, voice came through the sound of his brother enragement. He gave commands to stop Poseidon's wrath and calm him down quickly before the world as a huge disaster zone before the entire human population died. Hestia helped try and calm down Poseidon, boomed Zeus. Hestia disappeared in a flash of flames and tried to soothe her brother with a lullaby when they were in their father's stomach. The sea god faltered a bit but kept up his destructive rampage. Annabeth called out to Percy to try and help calm his dad or use his powers to negate some of his father's damages done to the earth. Due to his unbridled rage against Gabe and sadness for his son and his lover Sally, Hestia was working her magic on calming down one of her brothers. While Percy was trying his best to control the storms and disasters from reaching land, he was also trying to keep it in the oceans while the earthquakes happened, of course, but not as powerful as it could have been. After 20 minutes they finally had an exhausted Percy on the floor panting and a slightly calmed down sea god. Of course Naruto knew, as he had told him along the way. Naruto was not happy about that. Of course he wouldn't be, sighed Thals. She was thinking about how lonely she was because she was the only person from the books so far. I don't have any cash, Naruto heard Percy tell him, which made the man raise a greasy eyebrow. Ew, squealed Aphrodite. Shivers went through all the goddesses, thinking how horrible he must look and smell. Then some of them looked sick with slight green faces that looked like they were going to throw up. Percy had told Naruto that the man could smell money but not much else, which was very odd. Hey, do you think he is a human, hellhound hybrid? Joked Talia. Thal's just smiled while Percy laughed and Annabeth just shook her head with a smile on her face. You took a taxi from the bus station, he said. Probably paid with a 20. Got $7 in change. That must be the only logical thing this Gabe said so far, snorted Athena. Somebody expects to live under this roof, he ought to carry his own weight. He is only a child, scolded Hestia. The occupants in the room just nodded their heads in agreement. Am I right, Eddie? This is repulsive, whispered out Annabeth with tears in her eyes for her best friend Percy. The other demigods just frowned but wholeheartedly agreed. Eddie, the super of the apartment building, looked at Percy with a twinge of sympathy. Come on, Gabe, he said. The kid just got here. At least he is slightly better than that pig of a man Gabe, commented Demeter. No, he said he just got here, so that means he will pay money sooner or later, said Athena. Well, anything is better than that pig of a mortal, sneered Artemis. I wholeheartedly agree, little sis, smiled Apollo. Artemis gave a small smile but covered it up by a scowl and screamed out, I am not your little sister, I helped deliver you into this world. Am I right? Gabe repeated. No, you are wrong, mortal, thought all the immortals in the room. While the half-bloods just thought the same as their parents. Eddie scowled into his bowl of pretzels. The other two guys, Naruto noticed, passed gas in harmony. I think I am going to hurl, said all the goddesses. Except Artemis, because she had spent time with pigs, assholes, boy, or even bastards at some point. Or as she called them for better purpose, a fine example of a disgusting males. But the moon goddess looked a little green. Fine, Percy said. He dug a wad of dollars out of his pocket and threw the money on the table. I hope you lose. So do we, thought gods and demigods alike. Before anything could be said or done, Naruto put a hand on Percy's shoulder and the money. What are you going to do? Questioned everyone in the throne room. Percy looked at Naruto oddly before he noticed the gleam in Naruto's eye. Oh, Gabe was so screwed. How? Ran through all the minds in the throne room. How about I play? You can take my money if I lose. Naruto said. Percy smirked. He knew from experience. I wonder how badly he beat you. Hopeful not too bad, mocked Annabeth. Percy just blushed and thought, he properly kicked my butt 6 ways to Sunday. And a lot of others at school too, that Naruto never lost at card games, and he didn't even know how to play some of them. That is talent, smiled Hermes. Everyone thinking how good their lives would be if they had that luck. I wonder if he would beat Chiron at Pinnacle. If he does, then Taish herself must favor him, muttered Dionysus. What? A brat like you? Gabe said, eyeing Naruto. He is not a brat, you tuskless walrus, snarled out Thals. Afraid of being beat by a kid? Naruto smirked. Besides, I got $100, are you going to pass up on that? I wonder where he got all that much he could get, said Apollo. Well, his father is the god of wealth, smirked Hades. Demeter just rolled her eyes at her brother, son-in-law. Poseidon just sighed and said, can we please get back to the story so I can find out what happens to my son and Gabe's fate? That got Gabe's attention. Of course it did, thought everyone in the throne room. Even though he was mad, Naruto did have money. He would win it from this brat and rub it in his face. I don't think it is going to turn out that way, mortal, sneered out Hera. While Hestia just nodded her head agreeing with her sister. Fine, sit down and play. He is so going to regret that, smiled Thals. Good. Naruto sat down and leaned over to Percy. This will be over soon. Very soon, smirked Thals. Zeus looked at his daughter and frowned at her relationship with this son of Hades. You should get settled in, it is your place after all. Oh, how I wish I had a son like that, All the goddesses said expect Artemis. She often thought about have a child but brushed it off because her hunters, especially Zoe, she considered her children. As the game began, Percy nodded and left. He hoped Gabe would so lose to Naruto. Well, do you think he would lose to a walking beer can? Mocked Thals. Annabeth and Talia just smiled and high-fived Thals. Annabeth on the right and Talia on the left hand. Talia just thought her book self was awesome and couldn't wait for her appearance. He slammed the door to his room, which really wasn't his room. It's not, threatened in anger Poseidon. During school months, it was Gabe's study. What in God's name does he study? Shouted out everyone in the throne room. Then they looked at Percy for an answer to their question. Percy just struggled and said, nothing, absolute nothing. All the people in the room just chuckled and began to listen to Annabeth read.